Now will we see the magic?
All right, where's Murray? Okay, who is it?
This is Jesus, kid.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Hello, and welcome to Mary vs. the Movies with your host, Mary Jones.
And Dennis Ling.
And this week, we are just about on our 4th anniversary of doing this show, which is crazy if you ask me. I can't believe we've been doing it that long. Can you?
No.
Okay, well, so I guess, I don't know, was it a year ago, 2 years ago, I decided that March would be Dennis versus the Movies month. The whole idea is I'm going to make Dennis watch films that I liked as a kid that are, you know, from generally our time period, 1977 to about 1992, that he would have to watch them, things that he's never seen or doesn't remember at any rate. So,
and then if the movie's lost, then I would destroy them.
No, you don't. No, God, you don't get to destroy anything. I've said this before. You don't even.
Hey, your movie passed this past time. It's movies 1, Dennis 0 so far.
Yeah, that's yeah, exactly, and that's how it's gonna stay. All right, so last week we watched a film starring Tom Hanks, The Burbs, that I loved as a kid. I watched on cable all the time. You know, I had one of those childhoods, not unusual for the people around my age, where my mom had to go to work in the morning, and so I just watched television at night. And, you know, I think it turned out okay. I would say TV didn't let me down. Mom, what do you think?
No comment.
Oh, God. All right, so after 177 episodes, this is 178. We've had bonus episodes. We have Hollywood Avalon. We have all, I'm actually over 200 episodes. But as far as I'm concerned, this is episode 178. And welcome to the show, finally, my mother. Look, you inculcated in me a love of film.
Yes, I always liked movies.
Yeah.
And I watched many, 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 many movies.
Right. And you watched movies that were old when you were a kid, right?
God, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I grew up on Channel 6 was the main shower of all the old movies. You ask me anything from the 1930s through the 30s, 40s. I mean, I've seen them all.
Exactly.
You know, Saturday afternoon.
And you passed that on to me because, you know, I also have a love of movies from like the 30s and the 40s, and I watch a lot of TCM. If you said, hey, let's go watch 42nd Street, drop of a hat, I'm there. How
about Naughty Marietta?
I will watch Naughty Marietta. Yeah, no.
Rosemary.
Absolutely. Any of the Jeanette MacDonald, Nelson Eddy operettas.
Oh, yeah.
I'm absolutely there for it. So the reason I'm having you on the show is, you know, this is like our 4th anniversary, and so we've been doing this for a little while, and that's pretty good for a podcast, honestly. For a podcast that is not made by professionals,
yeah, this
is pretty good.
Okay,
yeah. So that's number 1. Number 2, you know, my love of movies. This is, you know, sort of a, you know, just wanted to kind of acknowledge, hey, this is where this comes from. Mm-hmm. Finally, I don't know, 3C, whatever. I have not kept track of how I've been actually counting time. Our movie tonight is Joe versus the Volcano. And I'm showing this to Dennis because this is Dennis versus the Movies month, where he watches films that he's never seen and that I usually enjoyed as a kid. So he doesn't know this movie at all. You took us to see this movie. I don't know that you remember this, but we actually saw this in the theater. And it really stuck with me. And this is a film that you actually reference quite a bit. Yeah. What made you want to go see Joe versus the Volcano?
I like to go into the movies.
Yeah.
In the late 80s, 90s, there weren't a whole lot out there. And I would pick actors that I knew the content was going to be okay. Mm-hmm. You know, it wasn't going to be anything terrible because after you were like 8, 7, 8 years old, you and Ann. So you had to watch what kind of movies you went to see. And Tom Hanks had always been in something that was I could be pretty much sure that it was going to be okay. That was my only reason for going to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want any spoiler alerts.
No, because we don't want Dennis to know too much.
Okay.
You know.
All I will say to him is the opening scene or scenes in this movie are so relatable
Yeah.
to anyone who works anywhere.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be in an office. It can be anywhere. It is so relatable. You know, it can go on to being a little silly, but there are so many good parts to this thing. But the only reason I took you with me is I wanted to go to the movies, and it was so limited as to what you could go and see.
Yeah.
Did you guys go to see Big when that was in the theater?
We did see Big.
We
Yeah.
saw Big, but I thought we saw it on television.
No, we saw it in the theater.
If you saw it,
Yeah.
Again, another Tom Hanks. That you didn't, you weren't trying to be a responsible parent.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that I really didn't care for all the other crap that was out there.
You weren't going to take us to like Lethal Weapon or something. I mean, come on.
No.
But no, yes, Tom Hanks, that was definitely like safe territory for us. And, you know, even after this, like I remember you taking us to see like Philadelphia and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, that was marginal, but then you were older.
We were older, yes. I was like 14 at the time, and I think that was worth...
And, you know, certainly to be aware of what was happening in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, it was nothing that was sexual or, you know, nobody took their clothes off.
Right.
It was kind of deep information for you.
Yeah.
But
no,
thought it was something worth being exposed to.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, you took us to see Schindler's List. You know, there was a lot of like kind of, you know, that was a rough one. Yeah.
That was a rough one. Yeah.
Yeah. It was. I'm glad we went.
Yeah.
You know, but it was worth it. But yeah, that was a rough one. But you know,
I feel like late '80s, there isn't a lot for kids that isn't really dumb.
Yeah.
Or
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. You know, this was kind of before the Disney Renaissance, actually. You know, when they started making like The Little Mermaid and you know Beauty and the Beast and stuff like that. So you know, this was kind of like an empty period. But there were films like this that I think were totally fine to take a young person to. You know?
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. So I just wanted to have you on.
Okay.
And see, like, was there a reason you took us to see this? And honestly, the answer of I felt like going to the movies, that's a good answer. You know, like that. No, I'm serious. And the reason I think that's a good answer is films are just things to be enjoyed. Like sometimes they are like learning experiences. Sometimes it's like, oh, this is important. I should see this, whatever. But sometimes it's just like, no, I got to get out of the house. Let's go do a thing.
And you can edit all of this out.
No.
You know, your father wasn't around anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't have nobody was asking me to go to a movie.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get out of the house.
Absolutely.
Why do you think you got to the mall?
Yeah.
On a Friday night just to get out of the house? So, you know, that's the other reason that you got to go with me.
Yeah.
You know, gave me an excuse. You could come with me.
Well, look, I just want to say, you know, after 4 years of doing this podcast, and honestly, to some extent, this podcast exists because, you know, you took us to the movies a lot when I was a kid, and we lived kind of, you know, catty corner to a video rental store, and we borrowed a lot of movies from that place.
Sure did.
And yeah, and
questionably legal.
Well, yeah,
oh,
so
yeah, some of them were,
yeah,
you know, little gray area there. You know.
But no, I want to have you on and just, you know, just kind of pick your brain for a second, and thank you for, you know, instilling a love of movies in me.
You're welcome.
You know, like, no, seriously, it changed my life in for the better.
Well, I'm glad it was for the better.
No, seriously, Mom, thank you for coming on here real quickly. I really do appreciate it. Yeah. All right, Dennis. Now that we talked to my mother, I'm going to ask you some questions.
All right, what?
Do you know anything about this movie, Joe versus Volcano?
He dies.
I'm not going to say anything. Do you know anybody who's in it besides Tom Hanks?
No.
All right. What do you think happens in it?
I think he jumps into a volcano, and it's really sad. It's a sad movie about a man jumping into a volcano.
Do you truly believe this is about a man jumping into a volcano and dying?
Yeah.
Really?
It's a very sad movie. Dennis versus Joe versus Volcano.
Yes.
It's a classic court case.
This is turning into Des versus Mary at this point. All right, look. Do you think there's a dog?
Yeah, of course, because there's Tom Hanks, so there has to be a dog. He's kind of dog friendly.
The Turner and Hooch rule?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a death?
Yeah, him. He dies at the end when he jumps into a volcano.
Has Tom Hanks died in any movie other than Philadelphia?
Well, the people were so turned off by this death that they were like, well, let's not do that again.
No. All right, and what else? He dies at the end of Man Called Otto, but go ahead.
So I feel like he has like cancer or something, and so like this is how he decides to go out.
All right. Oh, now why do you know that?
I don't know. I feel like I heard that somewhere or something.
All right.
Yeah, and so that's how he goes out.
All right.
The end.
Is there a love triangle?
I think.
Is there a love interest?
I think there's a love interest. I think that he's like, well, there's no point hanging around, and then he finds love. He's like, oh, and then he declares her love as he falls into the volcano and explodes.
Wait a minute. He explodes as he falls into a volcano?
He jumps.
Sure. All right. So, I don't really have any other questions. Do you have any questions for me?
I don't think there's an angry dad.
Okay.
Sorry, you forgot the fourth.
That's right.
All important fourth dad / God.
There is
question.
Is there an angry dad / angry God, and is there a cool car?
Oh, is that another one?
That's another one. Believe it or not, having listened back to some episodes, is there a cool car?
No.
All right.
No, Tom Hanks, no.
And is there an angry dad?
I don't think so. For some reason, I feel like I'm not feeling it. I feel like, I don't know, like, there's something about the 80s. Sometimes they just kind of, like, people just exist without families.
That's yeah. No, I think that's true. That's definitely like a boomer hangover.
Yeah, it's like writers just, I don't want to deal with that.
All right. So, do you have any other questions before we go watch the film?
So when is this? This is late 80s, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Did it do well? Do you know?
I don't think it did well at all.
And where did you see it?
I feel like we probably went to the Andorra Theater in Philadelphia. Andorra, that was, it's the Andorra section of Philadelphia. So that's like kind of where Ridge Pike meets Henry Avenue.
Was that a bowling alley still, or was it a library?
No, that's the library. The library's been there since I was a kid. It still has the giant library letters outside, even now, 40 plus years later, which I kind of love.
My parents used to go to there when it was a bowling alley. And take
it
me.
upgraded and became a library. So, no. I feel like it was probably the Andorra Theater. If it wasn't the Andorra Theater, then it was the Plymouth Meeting Mall. Because we would occasionally end up at the Plymouth Meeting Mall, which was very far from our house in Philadelphia, actually. That was quite a ride.
That's where I used to go. I used to bike there.
I know, because you're from the suburbs.
Yeah.
But it was either that or...
I used to bike there right off of my paper route. I'd just bike over there.
Jesus Christ. What is this Leave It to Beaver nonsense? All right, so do you have any other questions?
No, that's it.
All right, then shall we go watch this movie?
Sure.
People say a man is made out of mud. A poor man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood and skin and bone. A mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. Say, Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can go. I owe my soul to the company store.
Saving Mr. Banks.
Oh, God.
Castaway. Forrest Gump. I feel like there's shades of every character he's played in this movie.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think you're wrong. Like, this isn't like the film where he becomes Tom Hanks that we all recognize.
No.
He was already there.
Yeah.
But I think you're right that you can kind of see shades of what he was doing in a bunch of other films here as well.
It's consciously trying to be an old movie. Consciously trying to be a Preston Sturges type film.
Oh, very much
is
so.
Fun.
There's a bit of Capra in there with the,
John Shanley, is that the director?
John Patrick Shanley.
I heard that one of his directions to the cameraman was hold the camera as if it was 5,000 pounds. To not make it look like a new movie. Like as if it's like, the old movies where they had these huge cameras that could barely move.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so John Patrick Shanley also wrote Moonstruck.
Yep.
Also, a little bit in the... See, that's not an old-fashioned film insofar as it's a romantic film.
Yeah.
I think it looks old-fashioned now just because, that movie's from over 30 years ago. But this is more consciously aping, the kind of comedies of the 30s and 40s, I think.
Did you read the story about when John Patrick Shanley sent his script to Spielberg, and Spielberg called him and said, I like your script. I hear you want to direct it. And he was like, what? I guess so. And he's like, I think that's a great idea. And then he hung up, and he was like, wait, I'd never said I wanted to direct it.
Oh, no.
But I wonder if Spielberg read the script. It was like, I bet he has an idea of how this should look, and I'll just have him let him do it.
Yeah, because this was produced by Amblin, by Spielberg, and all of that. So Tom Hanks plays Joe Banks.
Yeah.
And I not really thought about the fact that his name kind of rhymes there. Joe is a guy who lives and I guess works. No, he doesn't work he lives in Staten Island. But I think it implies that he works in Long Island City, which is way far away from... That's like the opposite end of New York City. Yeah. Oh, my God, that's miserable. I've had miserable commutes, but that takes the cake. So, yeah, but he never actually gets to be in Manhattan, right? That is just not part of his life. I mean, which is interesting because, again, that calls back to Moonstruck a little bit.
Yeah.
He's the advertising librarian for a medical device company.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that hits close to home, but I kind of want to, throw myself into a volcano after watching the first 20 minutes of this film because it it's not dissimilar from what we do.
At least we don't walk through mud.
We don't work in an office anymore.
Yeah.
That's kind of the nice thing. But yeah, so the opening, this is kind of modeled after Metropolis, I guess.
Metropolis, and then later Brazil.
Yes, very much Brazil.
And Hudsucker Proxy, or was that after?
I think Hudsucker Proxy was a little bit after, but Hudsucker is also kind of borrowing from Brazil.
Yeah,
obviously. And Brazil obviously is borrowing from Metropolis, but it's also kind of its own thing.
Yep.
We don't talk enough about how under the radar influential Brazil actually is as a film.
Maybe Brazil and Road Warrior are two of the most influential films of the 80s.
Yeah, no, they really are.
Yeah.
More than the bigger films of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, people will make references to Rambo or whatever, but I think in terms of people who actually make art, make real film, those are probably much more influential.
Yeah. And Blade Runner. It's like the big three.
Oh, yeah, Blade Runner. Huge. Absolutely. There's definitely a bit of Brazil in all of this. Right down to the fact that Joe wears, a fedora and a trench coat and all the rest of that stuff. He's dressed like it's the 30s and 40s. So this opening is maybe one of the most memorable things about this film. It's scored to, I guess, Eric Burden covering 16 tons.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things that my mother will sing whenever we're going to work. I think it also spoke to her as well. Yeah, like the closest thing I can compare the opening to is maybe like those scenes in Fargo of Jerry, in the ice and snow going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that miserable an experience.
A little bit of the crowd.
Yeah. Oh, sure, definitely. Yeah. For somebody who, I don't know that he directed a whole lot of films. I do like what Shanley is pulling from. I think he does a really good job, actually. He has this kind of miserable job. His boss is Dan Hedaya, and already that's miserable. And look, Dan Hedaya is always good in a film, but if you're working for a character played by him, you do want to kill yourself. He just feels miserable. Like the lights are always, this fluorescent tubing, like back when fluorescent tubes were the most depressing type of lighting you could have.
This is a little bit like the original British Office. There's that other guy, that twitchy guy in the corner, who looks like the Jim character in the British Office.
Of course, it's kind of hard to watch this. Like, I just started watching the second season of Severance. So, yeah, there's a lot of Severance vibes here.
Yeah.
Look, is working in an office maybe easier than, say, working in a factory or in a warehouse or in retail? Look, yes, obviously this is much easier.
Yeah.
It's really depressing, though. It sucks. It really sucks. Like, I don't even know if you can, like, if you haven't worked that job, it looks cushy. It's awful. We hate our lives. Please, we let us just become podcasters.
It's basically like, the Matrix. You're in a tube.
Yeah.
With purple goo or whatever it is.
I wish there was purple goo.
Yeah, I know. Oh,
maybe my skin would feel better.
So good.
He's a hypochondriac. We find out he used to be a firefighter, and I guess went through a particularly traumatic experience after saving kids from a burning building, and quit his job and just went to work in an office, and has since then has just felt kind of miserable and adrift, purposeless. He did this heroic thing. Presumably it terrified him, and has since just kind of curled into himself, and doesn't have any kind of family, doesn't have any relationships, doesn't seem to have any friends. He just works and then goes home. So he's easy pickings, shall we say.
Yeah.
And he's a hypochondriac, and so he leaves the office to go to the doctor, as he often does.
And this next scene, like, suddenly everything's white and it's like he's in heaven. The end of this particular life or something. Like, it's if
do
this
you
is
mean by
Siddhartha
going
or something.
by going to the doctor?
Yeah.
So he goes to a doctor played by Robert Stack, and the doctor says, "Yeah, you've got a brain cloud,
splitting the hemispheres of your brain."
Right. He's like, "Wait a minute, is this cancer? Am I dying?" And the answer is,
No.
No, you're not dying. Well, you're dying, but you're in perfectly good health until the moment you die. And I'm like, that's just called being alive. Wait, that's not it. I mean, insofar as being alive is a death sentence, inherently, going to that old maxim of, the seeds of your destruction are there in your birth. No, that's not a disease. But so he is told he has a brain cloud, and that he's basically going to die in 6 months. He's going to be in perfect health until the moment he dies.
Yeah.
So after going to the doctor, he is approached by a crazy wealthy man played by Lloyd Bridges. We never find out how he, sets this up to find Tom Hanks, right? We just know that he finds him and says, "Hey, I've got an offer for you. You have a brain cloud, right? And you used to be a fireman. You're a hero, right? Why don't you do me a favor and jump into a volcano?"
So wait, has he been seeing this doctor for?
I don't know how long he's been seeing this doctor. Like, the film doesn't really explain that. Look, the film's a fable, obviously. Like, you just kind of accept this. Yeah. We never find out why Lloyd Bridges knows who Tom Hanks is. We never find out, at the end of the film, we find out that, the doctor played by Robert Stack is employed by Lloyd Bridges.
He's Dr. Spachemin, basically.
Yes, exactly. And so the whole brain cloud thing is a ruse. We don't know this until the end of the film, but we also don't know why he was singled out, or how any of this was set up. But it honestly doesn't matter, right? It's not really about the mechanics of that. This film is meant to be existential. So he says, "Look, I want some minerals from their island, called the Wapaniwu.
Yeah.
And the people who live on this island, they control the minerals. They won't give them to me, but they believe that every 100 years you have to throw somebody into their volcano in order to appease the god of the volcano. And guess what, buddy? Time's up. And since you're going to die anyway, I'm going to let you live like a king for a couple weeks, and then you're going to jump in." Joe, who has nothing to live for, is obviously extremely depressed and doesn't really have anything going on. No family, no friends, no girlfriends, nothing. Says, "Sure. I'm going to die anyway. I may as well go out on top." He goes back and quits his job. The secretary who works there decides, "Hey, let's go out on a date." Well, he asked her out on a date, I should say. Yeah. And of course, she's played by Meg Ryan.
Yep.
And this is the first of 3 women played by Meg Ryan.
In true Powerpuff Girl fashion, she has black hair, red hair, and blonde hair.
I like that you have the Powerpuff Girl scale, or whatever you want to call it. So in this first instance, she is sort of the ditzy secretary at his job, and they go on a date. One thing I like about the date they go on is there is a scene of them in the harbor, and the skyline of Manhattan is behind them, and it's lit up in different colors. Like
Yeah.
it's very artificial. It's really pretty though, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of really pretty visuals in this.
You know
film.
what? There's a great line later where when he first sees L.A. and she says, "What do you think?" He says, "It looks fake. I like it." Which is one thing is the kind of thing I would definitely say.
Yes.
But it just seems to be a recurring theme in the movie of things being fake, and
Oh no, this is such a completely artificial film, like consciously artificial, which
Yeah.
I love. I think I wish more films were consciously artificial in the way that this is. She kind of puts him off at the end. I forget why she says.
Because he tells her that he has 6 months to live,
Yeah, she's just like, yeah, I
and
can't
she
deal with this.
because they're just about to do it, and then
Yeah, it's funny. Like there are like people talk about sex in this film, but it's very much a PG film.
yeah.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, they're like making out. I guess in his house.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
in his apartment.
Yeah, and then he tells her that I'm going to die in 6 months, and that's a big turn off.
Just a
for
little
her.
bit. Yeah.
I really like her transformation. Like she's like beaten down, like she's like hunched over. Everyone in that office is completely like just miserable. They're like shrimp. She's just delighted by him. She's like, wow, yeah, where did this come from? And she's just so excited. And then when he says he's dying, she's like, oh no, and then she just shrinks back and then leaves.
Granted, this is something just so that he encounters 3 different women, all
Yeah.
played by Meg Ryan, but at the same time, it's kind of like, no, yeah, I think you would kind of freak out, like, oh, this guy's suddenly like a lot more fun. Oh, he's dying.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm into this.
I guess the Shanley.
Yeah.
I think he had like a kind of near-death experience or something, and so he was thinking about how like getting close to dying makes you appreciate life more.
Sure. I mean, that's
And-
obviously the theme of the film.
Yeah, but also like when you haven't experienced that, like dying is the one thing you're most terrified of. It's like you're terrified of losing what you have, type of thing.
Now that he has a gold Amex card coming from Lloyd Bridges, he decides, I'm going to go into the city, into Manhattan. I'm not going to stay in my apartment. I'm going to like live it up in a hotel. I'm going to buy clothes. Essentially, like live it up. He calls up a limo service and has Ossie Davis show up as his limo driver. And Davis kind of acts as his guide in becoming, a man about town.
Now this is the my man Godfrey part.
Or Jeeves and Worcester in a way.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of thing where the guy who is employed and actually deals with rich people all the time looks at this idiot and is just like, okay, you need help. And it's interesting because on the one hand, there's a couple of things in this film that you could say are problematic, right? When we get to the end of the film and they go to the Isle of Wapani and it's all Hollywood, jungle theme islander stuff, like that's we'll get to that. We'll get to that,
Yeah,
right?
We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that. But then, like you could easily have a problem with, hey, here's the black chauffeur.
The magical black man?
The magical black man,
Yeah,
right?
What's that
Bagger Vance.
Bagger Vance.
Yeah. I don't think this actually becomes that, right?
Yeah.
Because that character could be white. That character could be anybody. Like that I don't like Ossie Davis, it's a grounded enough performance in a film that is not grounded. Look, I readily will say that's not my place to say. I'm
Right.
not black. Like
Yeah.
if somebody objects to it, like fine. Yeah, absolutely. But I do think like you could have put anyone in this role and it would have been the same thing. And the character would have been basically the same, and it just happens to be Ossie Davis.
Yeah.
You could make an argument, but I don't think it's that bad, right? This is a movie. It's mostly playing with a style of film from the 30s and 40s, right? Actually, even older. What we were talking about. You said this film reminds you of like a Charlie Chaplin film in a lot of ways.
It's definitely the trajectory of a tramp film,
right.
Where he has nothing and just stumbles into being rich through mechanisms. Like easily, this could have been a plot from a movie of his. Even the brain fog. Yeah. I've got brain fog. Oh, I quit my job.
Could easily have been something from the silent era. A lot of the stuff in this, and honestly, you're right. Like Tom Hanks does enough good physical comedy in this that it does feel rooted in other ways in those types of films. I mean, I think of like The Gold Rush. There's a couple of films where it's that rags to riches, back to rags sort of story for the tramp. Yeah. And they're basically kind of riffing on those same sorts of films here.
And of course, in the 30s, it was a very obvious. This is how you get out of being poor in the Depression. A billionaire just decides to, millionaire at the time.
Yeah.
Just decides to I'll just change your life, overnight.
I'll change your life if you kill yourself.
Yeah.
That's essentially what it is.
Yeah.
But no, you brought up My Man Godfrey, and there is a little bit of that sort of dynamic, in that film. Of course, William Powell, originally was a playboy who is down on his luck and ends up being hired as a butler for Carol Lombard's family, and then kind of whips them into shape a bit. And while figuring out his own way to kind of make life better for the guys he was living with on the street. And, so you have that kind of, the butler figure who is way smarter than the people working for him. Like, it's an old trope. I mean, like, honest to God, it goes back to, who wrote the Satyricon? Petronius. That's who I'm trying to think of. It's Petronius, okay. Yes. He a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum. That's another example, So yeah, Ossie Davis is kind of fulfilling that same, role. The guy who, the servant who is smarter than his master, right?
In Joe Banks' position, like, he's like, oh, do you want to have dinner with me? He's not really seeing him.
Well, he doesn't see him as a servant because, yes, he hired him for the day to drive him around, but he doesn't have that sort of, feeling towards people working in the service industry because, he was just like a a clerk who didn't have anything.
Now, in this part of the movie, he's basically his character in Big.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I think you're right.
He's basically just a child in this, in the adult world of being rich in New York.
That's, what? You're absolutely right. It's been a long time since I watched Big, but yeah, that's definitely the same thing that they're doing here. And that's fine. He's very good at that role, especially at this time period. So yeah, we have a whole, section of the film where it's him getting nice suits and eating in restaurants and like getting to stay in a fancy hotel. And I like that kind of sequence of, now we're going to live it up type thing. Then he has to jet off to Los Angeles. He flies from a New York City that really does feel rooted in like comedies from the 20s to the 40s, right? Like it definitely, they're obviously evoking that, but even like just the way that whole section is filmed feels more like that. When they touch down in Los Angeles, and the reason I bring all that up is because just the way everything looks in New York, everything still looks old. When they touch down in Los Angeles and now he's got to go to like trendy restaurants and stuff with the next Meg Ryan character, everything is very 1980s.
Yeah, like post Annie Hall, L.A., but it has that Annie Hall feel, like oh, I'm a New Yorker in L.A. What do I do?
So yeah, now he has to hang out with the daughter of Lloyd Bridges, a woman named Angelica, who again is played by Meg Ryan. She's kind of doing that, and again, it's like a type of character you would see from those films. Well, it's like Carol Lombard in My Man Godfrey, actually. I
gotta say, I did not recognize her.
Really?
I knew that the last Meg Ryan was the same as Dee Dee. Like, I recognized Dee Dee right away, but
okay.
I for some reason it didn't. I don't know.
Yeah. So now it's the redhead.
Yeah.
She's a redhead here, and her character is something between like she's got a bit of Carol Lombard in My Man Godfrey and a little bit of I don't know what we like Katharine Hepburn in Bringing Up Baby, a little bit of that. I also was thinking about, and not necessarily, but like Julianne Moore in The Big Lebowski, in that she is the daughter who is the daughter of the rich man.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
But also because she's affecting that accent, that mid-Atlantic accent.
Yeah.
Which is fun,
And she also has an accent as Dee Dee too.
Well, when she's playing Dee Dee, she has that kind of, New York region accent. Like, there's a lot of goofy accent work in this film, and it's very, again, artificially sounding.
You know what? As Dee Dee, she sounds like a British actress trying to sound New York.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. But again, I think it's all intentional sort of accents that are heightened, right? Because everything in this film is heightened. He has to spend time with Angelica before the ship is ready to sail him to the island. So it's not really a dating situation. They're just kind of like hanging out together because they're, she's filling him in on some of the details of, her father and the trip that they're about to take. So then we finally get to the third Meg Ryan character when the ship is ready to sail, and that's Patricia. And now we have blonde Meg Ryan, which is,
The classic Meg Ryan.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
Meg Ryan you're thinking of.
So this is their first movie together. We're bringing up this now because like basically the first two characters are just other characters. But
Yeah.
this is Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
What you want.
Yeah.
Sleepless in Seattle style,
Exactly.
adorable love.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as opposed to You've Got Mail, which I hate.
Yeah.
No, we don't talk about that. Sleepless in Seattle, great movie.
Right.
Yeah, this great movie. You Got Mail, hate it. I hate it so much. I really hate that movie. Which is funny because I love the original, film, The Shop Around the Corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I love In the Good Old Summertime, the 1950s version with Judy Garland.
Well, the Shop Around the Corner wasn't about venture capitalists just bleeding local things dry.
Bookstores. Yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, it's such an ugly late 90s, isn't it great to surrender to like the giant corporation type of film. I really hate You've Got Mail so much.
Yes.
Like not even just the AOL product placement, which is really funny in retrospect given where AOL went.
Yeah.
But there's so much to hate about that film.
Mm-hmm.
What a sour note to go out on. God. But yes, this is their first film together. And God, they really are charming together in this, aren't they? There's something very sunny about Patricia,
Yeah.
the character. She is the captain of the ship. See, is she the captain or is it what's her name? Dagmar. Dagmar, is that her name?
Oh, Dagmar. Amanda Plummer.
Amanda Plummer has a small role in this. I didn't even bring up Carol Kane's little cameo in this as a hairdresser. It's very fast. She's not credited, but it is absolutely Carol Kane for like half a second.
Yeah.
I don't know why she's in it, but I am glad she was there.
I'm pretty sure that's the same character from Kimmy Schmidt.
You know what? I hope so. Yeah. I really do. They have this ship with, a couple of crew members, but then, Amanda Plummer is sort of, I guess, the Starbuck of the
ship is called Tweedledee.
Yep.
And it's her father, Grahamore, is the family name, and he has another ship called another yacht. It's a yacht, like a sailing yacht, and the other one is called Tweedledum. And she's more independent than her sister.
Yeah.
From her father, and she's mad at herself because he promised her this boat if she would take him to this island. She's like, yeah, I'll take this Joe Schmo. Or Felix, as she calls him for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know why she keeps calling him Felix, but I kind of like that.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm sure that it's referencing something and we have no idea what. Or like I'm sure Shanley has some sort of reference in mind for this. But yeah,
there feels like there's like symbolism all over this movie.
Oh God, yes.
Like I know there's like lots of online theorizing about all.
Well, that's what's interesting. This film was a huge bomb when it came out. Other than my mother, people did not like this film at all, which I find interesting because it's not a comedy. It's not a broad comedy, right? It's not a comedy in the sense of a laugh a minute, a slapstick or whatever. Moonstruck is a comedy, a romantic comedy, but that's more inherently romantic as a film. This isn't really a romance, right?
Well, I think a part of it was that people had come to expect certain Tom Hanks. They expected Tom Hanks movies to be fun, light, easy, and here's this guy who's like,
going to kill himself.
Yeah,
yeah. It's a movie about suicide.
Yeah,
it's kind of like when you actually sit and think about what It's a Wonderful Life is about, and again, it's a film about suicide.
Yeah,
it's the same sort of thing. When you sit and think about what the film is about, it's heavier than you expect. It's an existential film. It's questioning like what is the point of being alive, and it's actually about reclaiming a sense of joy in being alive, right?
Yeah.
It's about actually rejecting or at least finding some sort of peace with your own existence, right? And figuring out like what is worth living for. Like I don't know that the film entirely succeeds necessarily as a philosophical tract. In fact, I don't think it really does, but I don't think it has to because it's enjoyable otherwise. Like it's visually enjoyable. Like I like the characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's interesting to me. Like this film was a huge failure, but it has since become a better loved film than it ever was.
I feel like part of it is that it's made by a writer, and I don't know how much directing he's done, but it feels clunky as a film. Like it doesn't, like if Spielberg had made this film, it would have just smoothly gone by, and it wouldn't have been as touched as deep. I feel like like it would have smoothed things over.
I don't know if Spielberg would be the right director, but I know what you mean in that if it was somebody who has an experienced film director who could do these types of films, it probably would have. I know what you're saying.
Like this guy, this feels like a movie made by a guy who admires old films but loves Terry Gilliam. Like there's scenes like later in in the whole like finding himself New York, My Man Godfrey style movie.
Yeah.
It that also reminded me of Fisher King. And
yes.
The whole like, here's how to be yourself, like learning how to be yourself, through poor people thing.
Yeah, this is actually not a bad companion to The Fisher King, actually. The Fisher King's the better film, but this is kind of in the same vein in a lot of ways, right?
This is something I keep coming up with fans of the film, like Roger Ebert is one. He was a huge fan of this. It's like everyone acknowledges, okay, it's not a perfect film. It's not a great film, but there's no other film like it. It's wrestling with stuff that other films don't wrestle with.
Yeah, and I think, the fact that you brought up The Fisher King, and I was thinking about that when we were watching this, I think that's the closest to anything that is like this film. The only other thing I can think of is you have to go back to Capra, actually, to find something like this, like Meet John Doe. That that comes to mind, actually. There's a lot of Capra DNA in this, actually, because we brought up Preston Sturges, but actually the more I think about it, the more it's a lot more like Capra's pre-war films in a lot of ways. So yeah, they set off to sea. And, there's just kind of like some fun jokes about the fact that he has these giant steamer trunks that he bought when he was in New York. I love these things so much. I mean, I kind of just turned to everybody while we were watching and said, like, I need this in my life. I need one of these. And, like, they are the size of a person. I understand. Yeah. Like, yes, it's a film. You can't actually, but I need one of these things, right? The next time we go anywhere, can we have a giant steamer trunk and go by ship?
Yeah, there's this wonderful scene in the like a little bit like Pretty Woman when she's like, shopping for dresses and stuff, but where there's this guy and he just cares about luggage and stuff. And Tom Hanks says, yeah, I'm going out to a deserted island. I don't know if I'll be living in a hut. And then he opens up these doors to like, and let's show him what he's won. It's like a game show practically. Like, and there's this gleaming,
the most beautiful steamer trunk you've ever seen in your life. Where like the one half it has all of like the drawers, like you're supposed a mirror, like you can hang your. Oh my God, this is the dream. Oh, I want to travel like this. Yeah.
And then he orders 4 of them.
Yeah. Sure, why not? Yeah. You're going to die anyway. Have the 4. Mm-hmm. Well, the 4 do come in handy because as they're...
Chekhov's trunks.
Yes. Very. You love Chekhov's gun, don't you?
I do.
Yeah, you bring that up quite frequently. I mean, you're not wrong, but...
I love the more obscure objects that will be coming back. Like, I don't know. And the thing, like with this movie, like things are constantly repeated. There's like a duck theme. Graham Morey has this cane that has a duck head on it. He's like shaking in front of the camera.
I don't remember the duck theme.
Apparently, I guess when he's in the doctor's office, there's like a porcelain duck somewhere or something that he's looking at. And then when Lloyd Bridges visits him, he has this cane and it's got like a duck head on it. And then later when they're at the island, you see the trunks and the duck is standing on the trunk.
Do we know what the duck symbolizes?
Supposedly it symbolizes that the doctor was a quack, but this sounds I don't know. But this sounds like like reverse people figuring out later saying like every time you see a duck that he's being taken advantage of or something. But
on the one hand, there's enough thought about things happening in this film that might actually be true. Like he may actually have intended all that stuff. But I'll tell you, man, as somebody just watching it. Totally went past me. Now, granted, I have not seen this film in many, many years, but... And
the thing is, I feel like with symbolism, it either works or it doesn't. Sometimes, like, with like David Lynch, you're like, I guess that's symbolic, but it's, sometimes you just feel it, Whereas other times when it's like something kind of literal like this, I'm like, that kind of misses. But I do like seeing the duck at the end.
So they go out to sea. And a storm whips up. There's some really nice visuals when they know that the squall is coming and the air is just green, like the clouds are green.
Oh, this is after the shark.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, there's a whole montage of their life on the ship as they're sailing. First of all, can I just, as an aside, we brought up it's a yacht, a sailing yacht. Okay, guys, this is not like the big stupid yachts you're thinking of that rich people have nowadays. This is a beautiful ship. This is what, like, if I had a yacht, which I no, but if I had one, this is what you want, right?
All right, I'm going to talk to a very specific group of people. This is the Duran Duran Rio yacht.
That is a very specific group of people, Dennis.
But those people know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
It's that yacht.
So yeah, look, it's not a schooner, but it's got sails, right? And this is not your big ugly yachts that you're thinking of nowadays. This is a beautiful sailing ship, like a small sailing ship. Remember, things in the 80s were smaller.
What yachts were back then?
Right.
Not the $40 billion yachts that people were always buying at.
No, God, no.
Like in the early 2000s, and they got bored, and then they decided to buy the politicians instead.
I'm just saying, if I had a boat,
and if I had a pony, I'd ride them on that boat.
Wait a minute, it's not that big of a boat, hon.
Sorry, it's a Lyle Lovett song.
Oh, okay, fair enough. There's a montage of them like just kind of fishing off the side of the boat and fun stuff. And Dennis was very happy to see a joke where they catch a hammerhead shark.
They somehow managed to make a shark less real looking than Jaws.
Yes. It's a very goofy looking shark.
It looks like a flip flop.
You know what? It looks like that shark that you carved for me, actually.
Oh,
but
yeah.
yours was based on a 18th century Japanese drawing that everybody kind of thinks is like, wow, those are some goofy looking sharks.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is what that looked like. I mean, to be fair, hammerheads are really weird looking.
Yeah.
Like, they're such a goofy looking shark. Anyway, a squall is coming and the air turns green. And, again, this is such an artificial film. This is a very artificial looking fog that rolls in. Like, it's bright green. I love it. I love how artificial this film is. A storm whips up, eventually takes out the yacht. The whole crew, we assume, is drowned. And the only people who, as far as we know, survive is Joe and Patricia. Joe is able to save her and tie together his 4 huge steamer trunks into a giant raft.
Now he sees Tweedledee get split in half by lightning. Now this lightning is in a very specific shape. It's the same shape as like the sidewalk going up to like the company and then a company logo. There's a crack on his wall that's the same shape.
Again, it's symbolism. Yeah, this is the things that have tormented him coming to continue to torment him. Yeah.
Yeah. Later he talks about walking a crooked road.
Exactly. Like, this is the crooked road that he has walked. It is still haunting him as he plans to kill himself. Then we have a whole thing of them out at sea as she is unconscious the whole time, and he has 1 bottle of mineral water that he is, feeding her while not drinking any himself.
Yeah, like 1 lid of water.
Yeah. and he's slowly kind of going crazy because he's dehydrated and the sun is beating on them for days. We don't know how long. And there's some fun hallucinations that we start to see.
Yeah, the one of the constellations, that was really
Dennis,
cool.
That scene of the constellations has stayed with me since the moment I saw the film.
Yeah.
I'm serious. Like, and it is not very long. It is only like 10 seconds or so of him hallucinating the constellations as these outline images spinning above him. But it's so beautiful and it's so short, and it has stayed with me my whole life because I like stargazing, right?
Yeah.
We own a couple of telescopes. I've been into, like, I would go to the planetarium as a kid. Like, I love looking at stars and constellations and all that stuff. So like there was something so primal about that image for me as a kid, and it has always stayed with me. It's kind of like, in my head, that is my image of this film, is him in his jungle gym outfit hallucinating the stars. Just how beautiful an image it is.
And you saw those stars in Hawaii.
I did see those stars in Hawaii.
Yeah,
it was pretty cool. When we went to Hawaii, and I got up at 3 a.m. and I went out to the beach, and I could see Alpha Centauri for the first time in my life, and probably the only time in my life. Alpha Centauri, which is the closest star to this solar system, and I sat there on the beach, and I'm just, nobody's around. It's 3 a.m. Everybody's asleep, and it's just me looking at the stars and looking at stars that I've never seen in my life before. I'm fortunate enough to sit on this beach in Hawaii. Leaving aside the history of American colonialism and why that's a problem, yes, absolutely. But at the same time, you can take moments and just be like, oh my God, I'm sitting here in the tropics looking at stars I've never seen before. Isn't this amazing?
Yeah.
I wish everybody could be lucky enough to get to do something that they want to do and have never gotten to do, right?
And then we went to the Bishop Museum, and they had a thing with the stars, and they were wrong.
Yeah, they had the star, like they had these 2 panels of like the sky printed, in this one display at the Bishop Museum, which is a museum about Hawaiian culture, and it's actually it's fascinating. It's really worth going to. But they had a whole thing about how the Polynesians were able to navigate using the stars and all this. They are the world's greatest navigators. But the 2 panels of the printed stars, I looked at and went, oh, those are backwards.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute, no. Orion goes over there.
Mary it was a Neil deGrasse Tyson moment for you.
I was so annoyed. I was just like, that's not. They reversed them. Stop that. Yeah. The whole sequence of him slowly losing his mind as he is, dehydrating, and like there's that wonderful like giant moon coming out of the ocean and him, reaching out to it. There's so many wonderful.
They
little
probably
scenes.
had that prop from Moonstruck.
They probably did actually.
Yeah, let's whip it out again.
But eventually, they are found by the people of Wapaniwu.
Yep.
Okay, now let's get to the problem. Here's the thing. They set it up early in the film that this is an island somewhere in the South Pacific. They are not Polynesians. They are a group of Jews and Druids. They specifically say Druids, who were Roman slaves and were blown off course and somehow ended up on the other side of the Horn of Africa into the South Pacific. They're a mixture of Jewish, Celtic, Roman, and Polynesian cultures.
Yeah, because there was a small
group of Polynesians living on the island when they got there. And now they're this blended culture because they row outriggers like traditional Polynesian outriggers, but they also sing Hava Nagila. And, I mean, look, this is problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if there's one thing in this film that hasn't aged well, it's that whole idea of we are these primitive people living on an island. And look, the fact that they're like, no, it's okay because they're not actually Polynesian. We're just using Polynesian tropes from Hollywood films. I'm like, okay, that's still not okay. That's still not good.
But this is the most 30s part of the movie.
Oh my God, it is very
This is definitely
30s.
something they would do back then. Probably
Yeah.
without like the backstory. They would just say it's just Polynesian people.
They would never have tried to say, don't worry, they're actually white people who are doing this. It's fine. And they worship soda cans for some reason, which is just being weird.
That was something that's, I think,
What is that about?
I was lost. I think the soda was somehow introduced by Graham.
Oh, see, that I think is like a plot point that got dropped or something.
I read that somewhere, and I'm like, I did not see that in the movie. But I read somewhere that he got them hooked on it, and that's why. And because they got hooked on that, now they're too lazy to offer themselves up to the volcano god.
Okay, so that's something that definitely is not in the film.
Yeah, I don't know where this comes from. Is this in the screenplay? I don't know. But.
But yeah, so look, I will not defend this part of the film. I won't. I just won't. No, you can't. I mean, that is sort of the problem in that this film is playing with 1930s adventure film tropes right here. And, maybe that's something we can consign to history. We don't have to bring that back or find a better way to do it, I guess, maybe. But even then, man, I've never seen anybody really deal with this stuff well. I'm surprisingly kind of a defender of Peter Jackson's King Kong. Like, that film's too long, and they should have cut a lot of stuff out of it, just, because it's like 3 hours long. But there's a lot of stuff to like about it. But it's still kind of doing the same thing, right? Where you have like the primitive people who live on an island and they worship the monkey god, and they're going to sacrifice the white lady to it. It's the same thing. Yeah. And it's like, guys, I just don't think you can do this story. I get it. Like, I love those movies because I loved them as a kid. King Kong's an amazing film, but I also recognize, no, you can't do this. You can't do this anymore. So
also, Jack Black, like, I don't know about that casting.
Really, that's one of the things I liked was Jack Black as playing essentially Orson Welles.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Andy Serkis is King Kong. Mm-hmm. He's great.
Yeah.
Naomi Watts, she's great in it.
She is.
Like, it's not necessarily a great movie, but there are things I like about it. Mm-hmm. But it's, again, and that film is like 2008 or so, and that's too late to be doing this kind of movie. I didn't see that Jungle Cruise. The Jungle Cruise movie with The Rock and all that. Yeah. I hear like that avoids some of the bad, jungle movie stuff that you find. Like, but look, I mean, that's the thing. Like, we grew up with that, not just because I grew up with old films, but, Raiders of the Lost Ark, jungle stuff. Problematic, man.
Yeah.
Like, there's got to be a different, like, it wouldn't be the same film because I don't know.
So how do you feel about Fitzcarraldo?
I don't know, man. I mean, anytime white people make a movie about people who aren't white, it's probably a bad idea. I don't know.
Like that one, at least, it feels like Klaus Kinski's kind of the butt of the joke.
Yes.
Mostly.
Yeah, I agree.
Like
he is completely the butt of the joke.
Yeah, like he's a nut.
Yeah.
People die because of him, but yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think you're supposed to think he's heroic. In fact, quite the opposite. So, no, I think you're right. I think Fitzcarraldo can kind of avoid some of the problems because it's seen as an insane thing he did.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's also based on a true story, though.
Anyway, for this movie,
yeah, this is all... I mean... Yeah, again, nobody cast in this is native, and they don't make them, non-white. Like, they're all supposed to be white people. It's still weird. It's very weird.
It's led by Abe Vigoda.
And his spokesman is Nathan Lane.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is Lane's first film. It's early, though. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about, but so yeah, now we have like a whole sequence of you are now the honored guest because you're going to jump into the volcano. And so we're going to, pamper you and have a feast and everything before you jump in. We have some more fun little comedy bits of Meg Ryan being kind of like beautifully pampered and like given manicures and all this kind of beautiful stuff. And meanwhile, Tom Hanks is having like bananas shoved in his face and, tortured with like water and stuff. And, they're basically just treating him badly.
And this was the scene, like earlier he'd been told like, oh, you'll be worshipped like a god when you're at the island and that kind of thing. Like you're going to get, women thrown at you and all that stuff. And yeah.
Yeah,
that's quite what happens.
Well, I don't know. I mean, they worship Jesus as a god, and that guy got crucified. So, I mean,
true.
It's about on the same level. Again, it's playing with like those kind of, adventure film ideas, and yeah, it's a problem. But yeah, they basically say, look, none of us want to jump in. You're volunteering. Great, thanks. Go on up. And so there's an interesting...
Now, it is fun that it's Abe Vigoda doing it, and at one point, Tom Hanks says, is there some kind of ceremony? He's like, no, you just go up and jump in,
Right, exactly. They're very nonchalant about the whole thing, except saying basically like, yeah, we don't want to go in. Yeah, we're not stupid enough to jump into the volcano.
Yeah, this is very New York Jewish comedy.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. So, but before they go in, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, their characters basically, they realize, no, we love each other because, he saved her when the ship went down and all this stuff. And, will you marry us before we go up there? And they're like, okay, yeah, fine, you're married now.
Actually, she is the one instigating that. He's like, yeah, I love you too. This is great. But this is really bad timing. I gotta go.
Well, yeah, that's true. He's like, this is you don't want to marry me right now. I'm gonna die.
Yeah, I basically I think he's focusing like, what was I good for in this life? Oh, I was brave. I guess that's how I'm gonna go out.
Yeah, because it does sort of circle back to what did he used to do? He used to be a firefighter, and he did these incredibly brave and dangerous things, and then he lost his nerve. And this is his way of kind of regaining, a sense of who he is by, well, I'll sacrifice myself for people. And this time I'll actually sacrifice myself as opposed to the other times where I saved people. And she's like, yeah, but I'm in love with you even though you're none of those things. I don't care about any of that stuff, really. You saved me. I'm in love with you. It's not realistic. It doesn't have to be realistic. Like this is the way films, would be like, we get to the end of the film, we love each other. But at least they kind of build up to them having a rapport on the ship and him saving her and all that stuff. So it's not like this comes out of the blue. Plus, they just had great chemistry together.
If she hadn't played the other two characters, it would have felt odd.
Yes.
It would have felt like, wait, they just met each other, it feels like, in the movie.
No, having her play all three characters actually makes it work because we've seen him meet this person before, even though they don't know that they've met before in a way. It's yes, they're different people, obviously, but because it's the same actress, you're absolutely right. It doesn't feel weird.
If you logically look back on the film, you're like, well, none of this makes sense. Like, you could pull it apart at any moment, but like it feels right. Like the whole movie feels right.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. I don't think things have to be watertight all the time, right? Especially because, like, the point of this is not, plotting. It's not, does this make, literal sense? The point of the film is sort of just kind of like pulling apart, like, what do you do when you feel like worthless?
Yeah.
And somebody says, "Oh, you want to have a sense of self-worth? Sacrifice yourself." How many people join the military because, "Oh, this is how I'll find a sense of self-worth." People do dangerous things all the time because they want to prove that they have some sort of value.
Yeah.
And this is the same sort of story of, I'm going to prove I have value by doing something dangerous and stupid. And the film is more or less saying, you don't have to do that, actually. You have an inherent worthiness already. You don't have to prove it. You already are. Because what happens? They do get married. They do a very simple, yeah, you're married now. And she decides, I'm going to go up with him to the volcano where we're both going to jump in together. Again, that isn't logical. That doesn't make sense, like, if you are not in a film like this, but within the film itself, it's fine, right?
Yeah.
So they go and they decide, well, I guess this is it. We're going to jump in. And the volcano spits them out.
This is Little Tramp territory.
Yes.
This is definitely like a Little Tramp, Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd. This is easily something that could happen in any of those movies.
Yes, this is you're going back into that type of silent film sort of comedy. The volcano just puts out a big plume, spits them out, basically saying, "Nope, we're not letting you die now." But
and then kills everyone else.
Exactly. I mean, okay, so like that part I do think that like doesn't make sense for the film. Like then the volcano just decides to sink into the sea, and who knows what happens to the Wapani Wu because there's no island anymore.
That was set up in the beginning. That's
right.
That's what Lloyd Bridges said. Like if the god isn't appeased, the volcano will blow and the island will sink.
Right, but why do you think the god isn't appeased?
Because I think the god is like, well, I demand the people that are on my island to sacrifice themselves, not some borrowed hero.
That's a really terrible god to worship.
Oh yeah. I wasn't like, saying this was the greatest god in the world.
Fair enough.
Pretty lousy one. Really.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to worship him. He seems kind of mean, but no, yeah, that's probably you're right. The fact that they were like, yeah, we're just going to outsource this guy to die for us. Well, now, wait a minute. There is sort of a commentary in there if you think about it. The idea of like, why should we have to sacrifice? Let's get this dummy do it instead. So the island says, well, in that case, you all die.
Yeah.
Maybe there is a logic to that. Now that we're kind of pulling this apart, maybe it does make sense. And the fact that he gets spit out as saying like, no, you don't have to die. This wasn't for you to do.
I gotta say, this movie has. I had said no deaths. This movie has quite the body count.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of dogs.
It's
got a high body count.
Yeah. But does it have a love triangle? No.
Oh.
I don't consider that. Look, you can't. Okay, look. Is it three ladies all being played by the same woman? Sure.
Yeah.
That's not a love triangle, though. No, it's not a love triangle.
No, I guess it's a love star. I don't know.
A love square? No, that's not right.
Because all three are in love with him in some way.
Sure.
Well, it may be platonic in Angelica's way, but
Well,
yeah.
But anyway, yes, there's a lot of deaths in that the entire island sinks.
Yeah. Like, according to this movie, probably all of America sank when that happened. Like, the logic of this movie, like, yeah, whatever.
Well, I mean, look, the Wapani Wu, maybe they do symbolize Americans who are like, yeah, let somebody else die for us. Why should I have to put in the work?
Yeah, let's just use drones.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. But yeah, they are spit back into the ocean. The trunks pop back up again.
Of course.
And they're able to use them as a raft.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, maybe at some point we'll end up rowing back into land somewhere, but otherwise we're...
But this is where she susses out the brain fog.
Yeah.
And she's like, what? Really?
Oh, yeah. So he says, well, yeah, I mean, like, I'm still going to die because I've got the brain fog. So, like, I don't even know what the point of this is for me to go home. And she's like, yeah,
brain fog.
Brain fog. What are you talking about? So he explains what happened in his diagnosis. And she's just like, oh, you were set up by my dad.
Yeah, that's my dad's doctor.
Yeah, no, this was all a lie to get you to kill yourself.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like, it's played as a joke at the end, but it's also like, that's pretty dark.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's like, well, at least we're together. Mm-hmm. And you don't have brain fog. hopefully we won't die out at sea.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Well, they lived happily ever after.
Yes, that's
So,
true. And then
yeah.
yes, the film tells us they lived happily ever after. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dennis, what'd you think?
I loved it. It reminded me of Wes Anderson a bit, especially his later stuff where it's even more heightened and more obviously a story and not supposed to be realistic. Like Fantastic Mr. Fox, I think, is the closest. I don't know. It's like more about ideas than about like characters or something.
But I didn't think about Wes Anderson, but you're right. It's so visually stylized, right? And there is a lot of interesting symbolism in this film, not in a didactic way, but just yeah. Well, as we discussed,
I mean, it used to be more of a thing where
Yeah.
like films were just filmed in studios and things were just fake looking, and some directors made kind of took advantage of that, and I feel like we've kind of gotten away from that, and especially with CGI now we want to make everything even more realistic, quote unquote.
and aside from the fact that it doesn't look good,
Once you're telling a story, like right away you're changing reality, and I feel like that older films, especially like films taken from plays, that kind of thing, like it didn't have this slavish attitude towards, everything has to be completely realistic, and if a fight takes place in the dark, we're not supposed to see anything.
and it's so funny because it's not realistic. I mean, especially when you're talking about superhero films or whatever. Like they're not realistic. There's nothing realistic about superheroes. That's the whole point. Like let me see what's happening in those films. Turn up the lights because I can't see anything. And the reason that they don't is because the CGI is actually really poorly done.
Yeah.
It's not because they like to claim that like, well, it's realistic because if it was actually this dark at night, it's like the whole Game of Thrones thing. It's like, no, it's just because you didn't want to spend the money to actually make this look good, you little creep. I really just get so angry at the whole idea of like, well, we're going for like realism. And I'm like, no, you're not. There's nothing realistic about this. Like, yes, CGI can make stuff look good and CGI can be very useful, but I like the artificiality, the acknowledgement that what I'm seeing is not real. Because it's not real. But as you say, but the fact that you're watching a story means it's inherently untrue. Even a documentary is, to some degree, untrue because it is a documentary. It has a point of view and it has editing. The fact that you have editing, the fact that you have, somebody sitting there with scissors and deciding this is what you get to see means you can't entirely trust, what you're seeing on screen. And so why people have to sit there and think like, well, that movie didn't look realistic enough. It's just like, well, it's not supposed to. It's a movie. Like, what do you look? The only thing that looks realistic is your own, whatever you see with your own eyes.
Yeah.
Like we are so illiterate when it comes to how to watch anything now, right?
And I feel like nowadays, like when people think of realistic, they think of like video games with high FPS, like frames per second,
Yeah.
Animation, and like John Wick is kind of like the height of that or something. But and not to say anything against John Wick, but like
No, I mean
feel
those films are fun, but
I feel like that a lot of films are trying to copy that, but trying to go even more into a video game.
everything is video games now.
Yeah.
Everything is video games, and look, on the one hand, I'm just not a gamer. It's not my thing. I don't really get a lot out of video gaming. I used to play EverQuest 2 a lot, and that's fine. But I don't know. Like there is something about what you're saying that makes me hate video games. Because and the thing is, like, I see the value of video games insofar as it's an interactive experience and a way of, like, maybe telling a story. And I get that. Like, it's not that I don't think there is something valuable in that, but I do think it has sort of ruined the way people engage with things that aren't video games. Like, it's okay, like, to engage with video games as video games and in that way, but that experience should not be assumed to port over to narrative film that you don't control, right? Or anything that you don't control. Life is not a video game. Most things are not video games, right? And I think it's good to have artificial. And the thing is, like, I don't even like, dude, Cuphead. There's nothing realistic in Cuphead. It just looks really good,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm sorry.
I just feel like they don't go either. They either go too far or not far enough or something. Like I feel like that when they try to make movies like video games, they don't go like, it's not made by people that love video games.
Well, that's okay. Yeah.
It's like maybe there's people that love video games making it, but like I feel like the people making the final call shots, like they still want it. I don't know.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what a video game based on Joe versus the Volcano would be.
Yeah.
And
well, it would be 8-bit, which would be awesome.
Actually,
Come
that'd
on,
be pretty
that'd
good.
be a great game.
Yeah, I probably would play that actually.
We need it. Jumping into the volcano.
Oh God!
Volcano rejects you. Sinks into the water. Oh, that's great.
The sound effects alone. Yeah.
Shark.
And it wouldn't even be. Yeah, it wouldn't even be like the Sega. Type of. It would be straight up old Atari.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be Atari 5200.
Oh no.
Yeah. So joust.
The one nobody wants.
Joust style.
So that was Joe versus the Volcano, starring Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan, Lloyd Bridges, Robert Stack, Abe Vigoda, Dan Hedaya, Amanda Plummer, Ossie Davis, and who else was in this? Nathan Lane. Nathan Lane is in this. That's right. Written and directed by John Patrick Shanley. All right, you can follow us on social media. We are Mary vs. Movies on all of your major platforms. We even have the Tumblr working again. So on Tumblr, it is Mary versus the Movies. We are on Instagram, TikTok, Mastodon, Blue Sky. We're out there. So follow us. We have a Discord server, in fact, which you could find out the address for that if you sign up for our newsletter, which is free. And we have a newsletter. We put it out. We try to put it out with every episode. We don't always succeed because it takes a while to write things and life gets away from you. If you write to us, maryvsmovies@gmail.com, we can add you to our mailing list, and we talk about whatever the movie is that we watched, other movies that we're watching. Dennis sometimes draws comics. It's really good. Yes, Dennis draws comics. We make little movies with our mascot Reggie, and they're on TikTok and Instagram. We do all sorts of stuff. We're multimedia, baby. So sign up for those things. We are on all of your major platforms. We are on Apple Podcasts. We can rate and review the show. We're on Spotify. We're on what are the other ones? YouTube. That's right. We're on YouTube now, which is good. Yeah. Look, all platforms are problematic. I don't know what to tell you, man. I mentioned we're on Spotify. I'm sure somebody rightly would bring up, well, Joe Rogan gets all the money from Spotify. You're absolutely right. And I realize why that sucks. But, we're there.
Yeah.
What else? Follow us wherever you put podcasts in your ears. You can always get our RSS feed from Libsyn, of course, and you can get that from any of our social media accounts, I think. You can always support the show. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/MaryVSMovies. Do not sign up using the Patreon app because Apple takes like a 30% cut now. I don't know if it's that they will charge you an extra 30% or if they just take the money away from me. I think they take the money away from me. Either way, don't use the app. You can use the app once you've already signed up using a browser, but do not use the app to sign up if you want to sign up. So it is Mary vs. Movies on Patreon. So if you do that for $3 a month, yes, you're helping to support the show so that we can do things like, rent movies, the cost of our server, the server costs money to host the show. We have a Zoom account in order to have, guests and stuff. So, you'll be helping to support us because as you know, we do not have ads. We are not on a network. This is just him and me making this on our own.
So do you know if the Droid app Patreon would have the same
I don't
deal?
think so. I don't
Okay.
think that would be an issue. I think it's purely an Apple thing.
All right, just
Yeah.
checking.
But anyway, $3 a month. You would not only be supporting us, but you would get access to a whole second show, Hollywood Avalon. That's right, we watch Arthurian movies. And that is anything from Bugs Bunny cartoons to King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, the Guy Ritchie film that I surprisingly kind of liked, to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, to, we brought up The Fisher King.
Yep.
We have a whole episode on The Fisher King, which I love. That's one of my favorite films.
Me too.
And anything, if it's Arthurian in some way, we will cover it. And we did Knight Rider. Knight Riders is great. The George Romero film. We did Morgan Le Fay and her sex nymphs, or whatever it's called. It's a French film. Like that sounds crazy. It's actually just a really good folk horror movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually really good. It sounds sleazy, and I guess it is, but it's actually a really good movie.
It's kind of like a personification of those girl running from a castle covers.
Yeah,
Gothic
totally.
Covers.
Yeah, it's a very Gothic sort of film. It
Although
rocks.
it doesn't have that shot, and it should have.
But no. So yes, sign up for Hollywood Avalon if you want to hear us talk about all those kinds of films. So I think that's it then. And so, all right, next week we are continuing with Dennis versus the Movies month. And we're going.
I'm 0 for 6 so far.
Yeah, I know.
In all the Dennis versus the movies.
I was going to say you were definitely not going to destroy this one.
What's this?
Joe versus the Volcano.
No, I mean the next one.
Well, you're not going. You know what? You're not going to destroy this next one.
Really?
Oh yeah. Do you want to know what it is?
What is it?
The Muppets Take Manhattan.
Is this one of the better ones?
I like it. What do you mean? Is this one? Well, Jim Henson was still alive.
All right.
I think Frank Oz directed it. I'm not sure.
Huh.
It's set in Manhattan. It's the Muppets, and they take it.
Is Peter Falk in it?
No. I'm not gonna say. I'm not gonna say anything more.
Okay.
But it's Muppets.
All right.
Come on, man. It has an amazing ending.
Oh, okay.
I'm not gonna tell you anything more.
Huh.
If we're lucky, we will have a special guest. So, hopefully, fingers crossed, Zach Wallner will join us once again, since it is a Muppets film.
Yeah.
And, that would be very good. So, I think that's about it. All right. So, until next time.
Very exciting as a luggage problem.